How was your initial definition of success going into Wall Street?
Success to me is finding that deep fulfillment and that deep contentment of being who you are.
When you connect to this authentic expression of yourself,
Get the word success, then this is a big thing that I learned from.
at these highest levels, how close are you to burnout?
You can cultivate these flow states, and I know you want to talk about flow states, but
Build a relationship with that, because I mean that's been the gift I've got from plant medicine.
what does abundance mean to me? Nobody else that can do that like you. You become irreplaceable to the world, and that is valued, and that will become more valuable and valuable to your clients, to your employer, to the universe ultimately. So, we're all here to express ourselves to the fullest. And one of the key relationships you have to find abundance is relating to the universe itself, recognizing that you can be a friend to the universe.
This is the Microdose Podcast. I'm your host, Gareth Carter, and this is a show where we speak about the intersection between unlocking flow, bettering your performance, overcoming creative blocks, and altering your traits through altered states. It's our first episode in 2025, and we bring on a really special guest, Jason Pickard. Jason was a top trader under 30, mentioned by Forbes and Wall Street. He was a billion-dollar portfolio manager and a critical player who worked under Paul Tudor Jones. After having much material success that most people could only dream of, he found himself deeply unhappy, unhealthy, and unsatisfied with his life that led him to seek a spiritual journey to grow and learn and bring his teachings into the world. On our podcast, Jason shares how we can redefine success in our own life and how we can create a roadmap and blueprint to abundance, success, and joy in our life through his course, The Abundance Archetype. I hope you enjoy this episode, and there will be links to his information in the description below. Enjoy the episode. Thank you for watching and keep supporting. Thank you. Well, firstly, I'll maybe formally introduce you. Thank you for coming on the Microdose Podcast. I'm really happy to have you here and really excited to chat to you and kind of poke at some of your wisdom and see what I can learn and hopefully what our guests can learn. And yeah, just honored to have you on the show. And yeah, I don't know if you would be able to open for us with a small meditation or something to bring us into the space, and we can take it off.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because you sent me an email saying, hey, why don't you lead us with something? I'm like, what am I going to do? Because there's many different types of meditations, right? And then ultimately, I think with meditation, we have to think of what is the point of the meditation, right? Like, why do we meditate? Is it to be better meditators? Is it to be more calm? Is it to numb out? If you look at the root word of meditation, it comes from the same root as medical or medicate. So, it makes me think about, like, sometimes are we doing meditations just to medicate ourselves and almost numb out, like a ketamine dissociation or something like that, instead of really going someplace? Where are we going with the meditation? Why are we doing it? Are we trying to devote to something, connect to something, be something different? And how do we integrate that into our life? Not just spend 8 hours in lotus posture, but actually, what are we doing with this? What's the point of it all? So I was thinking about what to do, and a very simple exercise came up to me, which you had mentioned in one of your notes as one of my microdose meditations. My belief is that even in the mainstream world, like even at work, doing a corporate gig, that it can be beneficial to us to find times during our day to slightly alter our state. And why do we do that? We do that because there's a whole world of information. In fact, there's like the 99% available to us that is not normally available to us through our left brain perception. So, if we think about the amount of light we can see, it's about 1%. If we can think about the amount of sound we can hear, we know our dogs can hear things that we can't hear, right? We know animals of all kinds can hear things. Bats can hear things we can't hear, for example. Animals can smell things we can't smell, and so forth. So there's so much more information out there. And actually, when you open up to the possibility that, in fact, in your normal day of perceiving things, you're getting a very limited band of that information, you can open up to this mystery of what's possible that I can't see and let that inform you in your everyday life, even in a corporate world. And this is kind of like opening up to the right brain perception, per se. So I thought of a
Yes.
little thing that I thought of a little thing that I do sometimes throughout my day to have these little micro doses of altered states. And it's a very simple exercise that people can do at home. And so, in general, I'll lead you through this, and people doing this can do this on their own. But the beginning of it is, what is something that you're working on in this moment? I mean, it could even be this podcast, inspiration for
Yes.
this podcast, or could be like a challenge that you have, or a big or small question that you have in your life. So maybe you can just like start with an intention for this. Is there something that comes up for you?
A thing that comes up for me is often what I try to do with meditation is, I guess, getting out of my own way. Like
Okay.
to try and bring down that default mode, that inner critic, and allow the voice of my soul to kind of come through. And
Yeah.
that's often where I'm, I guess, trying to, you know, navigate and work through, is moving past this, like limiting beliefs and self doubt, and coming, yeah, into a space openly and with presence. Yeah.
Yeah. And you brought up a lot of interesting things that maybe we can get into later. For example, the inner critic. What
Mm,
if what if there's an important message there? We don't know, right? And so, one of the things that I work with, and this is sort of separate from this meditation, but is maybe we need to listen to that voice more. Actually, maybe there's an important
mm,
message, and maybe it's get the hell out of here. We don't know. But even opening up to the possibility that's an important part of ourselves. But for this intention, summarizing what you're saying, essentially, like, how do you connect to your soul? How do you
yes.
connect to the deeper part or the essence of yourself? So let's just go in with that for a moment, and let's just clear your mind. Drop all of this, and anyone following at home can have their question, big or small, and challenge, relationship challenge, or body
Mm,
symptom, or you know what is God, or what should I eat for breakfast? It doesn't matter.
mhm.
And drop it all for a moment. Let's just take a few deep breaths and kind of go inside, maybe even close your eyes for a moment, just watching your breath, inhaling and exhaling, letting everything that you've been carrying so far today just go momentarily. Don't worry, it'll still be there when you're done, if you want it to be. Taking a few deep breaths, letting your mind go a little bit foggy, like almost dreamlike, almost entering into a slightly altered state, a state that you would go into right before you fall asleep, almost like a beginner's mind, opening up to possibilities and curiosity. And from this state, just want you to think of the first song that pops into your head in this moment, and go with the first song. And when you're ready, maybe you can tell us what that song is.
I'm embarrassed. It was Ooh Barracuda.
That's so
That
good.
song.
Yeah.
I don't know why that
So,
one came.
yeah. So just trust that for a moment. Okay. So start to sing that song in your head. You may even hum it out loud, or let that song begin to move through your body. Maybe it begins to make a movement or even a dance, and start to study it. What is the rhythm of the song and the tempo of the song? Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it upbeat? Is it melancholy? What is it ultimately trying to express through this inspiration? What are the lyrics of the song? What is it pointing to? If this song was a messenger, what would it be bringing to you in this moment? And when you just kind of get a little bit of a snippet of it, it's sort of like catching the tail of a creative process. As it might not give you the full answer, but when you get a little bit of a hint, then you can open your eyes and come back. And so maybe you could share a little bit with this Barracuda. What did you get with that?
I don't know why I got the song Ooh Barracuda, and it's almost like I had a mental landscape of people in a old Corvette driving down the highway and this dun 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 dun. And I
I
think
like
for
that.
me
Yeah.
the message, it's yeah, it's partly what I'm doing in my life. I'm shifting careers and I'm trying to go in the fast lane, but that song also has like a playfulness to it that
Yeah.
I'm trying to get somewhere, but um, you can have fun along the way. But I'm also like aware of like I don't have to be cruising in the highway lane the whole time, which is maybe where I've been for a bit. Um, so I don't know. Yeah, I wish it was a more profound song to be honest that popped up.
Well, that's the thing is that these things come in interesting ways. So I mean, what is a barracuda to you? What does that bring up for you when you think of a barracuda? I mean,
I
there's
think
something
of
like
working on the super
fish.
yachts. Yeah.
Working on what?
I worked on the super yachts for a bit as a deckhand, and I know there were like barracudas in the water. Funnily enough, that's like
Yeah,
what I
there's a
first think of.
part of this animal that is, going underneath the water and kind of willing to go deep into the shadows. But there's like a ferociousness about the barracuda, right? And
Mm,
there's this lively energy of that song and almost a sense of like freedom and momentum and going someplace and, you
mm,
know, being like what that feeling of being in the Corvette that like there's a freedom to that, right? There's a freedom and an ease to that. And so, these are just the kinds of things that, when as you're working on these problems, you can start to just understand that everything that's coming up in your day can be a part of an answer. And so, you can allow a song to pop into your head. And, normally we wake up and we sing, Oh, Barracuda. And we think, oh, why is this annoying song in our head? But when we just stop to ask the question, giving that importance, just like we give the inner critic importance, just like we have a movie that pops into our head, or a dream that comes, or a fantasy, or a daydream, or an animal that crosses our path, or a body symptom, or a spontaneous movement of our body. All of these things are there to awaken us to our own wholeness and to help us answer questions. And so, reflect on this Barracuda song and see what comes up for you in your life. But, it might even just be like to not take yourself so seriously in this
mm.
process, realizing you're on a journey and it's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be a rigid, hard thing. And you can have this fluidity as you're doing it, but also to be like, almost fierce and ferocious in the process, like a Barracuda would be.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to start to pay attention to just these hidden messages and everything around you and how your body and I guess your unconscious is always speaking to you in so many different ways. Um, and yeah, for me, I think it's been a part of my journey where I've had a lot of, tough, traumatic stuff. And it's actually like really amazing to be on the other side in a like quite joyful and playful state because I know obviously listening to yourself and Paul Check speaking about like bringing that unbound play into your life. And I just thinking this afternoon before the podcast, I was like, oh, what can I do to ground myself? And I just went and played with my dogs on the beach for like, 20 minutes.
Perfect. Yeah, maybe that's the barracuda energy. It's interesting too because barracudas are almost like snake-like in their appearance.
mm,
And you mentioned something about that, about like transforming and changing and going through a different phase. And so maybe this process of, finding yourself is almost a letting go of a skin or a layer
mm.
and, finding that part of you that has that strong conviction inside, like a barracuda. So these are not determined. These are not meant to be like, oh, I have like the complete answer. But if you're
Mm,
thinking about what is the essence of this podcast, or what is this essence of this paper I need to write, or what is the essence of this project that I'm stuck on? Sometimes checking out momentarily. For example, like you're sitting at your desk, you're working on something and you can't get the answer. And you decide for 10 minutes you're going to go out for a walk in nature and you're just going to look for an object that catches your attention. These are microdoses. This is
mm,
a real microdose. You go out and you walk in nature and you say, I'm just going to keep walking in the woods until I come across something that catches my attention. It might be a rock or a leaf or an animal or a piece of garbage or something. And then you sit there and you look at that object and you say, like, what is it about this object that flirted with me, that caught my attention? Is it the shape, the color, the meaning? What is it about this? And let that inform your process. Because, in the same way where you say, like, I want to buy a blue Corvette, sticking with the Corvette theme, if you say, I want to buy a blue Corvette, then you go out driving, with your, your regular car, and all you do is you see blue Corvettes on the highway. And you're like, I can't believe there's so many blue Corvettes everywhere. Like, what is this? Are there more on the road? Like, what's going on? And the reality is that you primed your subconscious, saying like, that's important to me. So look for those, right? In the same way, when we wake up each day and we say like, why am I such a loser? Why can't I meet somebody that loves me? Why am I so fat? We're priming our subconscious to answer those questions and to confirm
mm,
those things. But when we wake up and say, like, why is it so easy for me to be healthy? Why is it so easy for me to meet the love of my life? Why do everywhere I go, I meet amazing people? Now we're priming to look for that positive thing.
mm.
And so when you have a question and you say, like, I can't figure this out, I'm stuck and I'm looking for the solution. In the same way that your subconscious will point out to you through the blue to the blue Corvette, it'll point out to you the same answer to what you're searching for through a song, through a memory, a childhood memory. You ever have those memories like, why do I remember this thing from when I was
Yeah, that
7?
comes up to, or like a
This
smell
thing
can
on the
just bring it up.
Yeah, like this thing on the playground with my buddy or something, or something somebody said to me, or this time I lost this thing or whatever. And then to put meaning into that and to say, like, these are like breadcrumbs leading me home, that I'm remembering this for a reason, that I have this body symptom for a reason. I dreamt what I dreamt last night for a reason.
Mm,
I'm looking out the window and fantasizing about something for a reason. I met this person today for a reason.
yes.
That there's meaning behind it all, even in the most inconsequential things. And letting that support you with the 99% that you can't normally access through left brain linear logical thinking that we mostly operate in on a day-to-day basis. We're opening up to a mystery, but we have a belief that the mystery has meaning and intelligence.
Yeah, and I think, just to go back a little bit, because even just speaking, like waking up in the morning and feeling, either like you hate yourself or why am I so wealth, like financially happy, and when the chips are down in life, and I think, when you're really in like a dark night of the soul or something, it's very hard to in the moment know that there's a thread of meaning connecting everything, because it can feel so pointless or meaningless. And I think that's where a lot of people sit. um it's kind of like once you've done work on yourself and you've kind of gotten to the other side, then you can look back with a bit of gratitude, and you start to piece the puzzle pieces together, and like, okay, I see why I had to learn that lesson or meet that person or go through this trauma. And I think it's really, like, it's a lot easier at times in hindsight than when you're in like this real pit of despair. And then I also wanted, because it's a good chance to kind of back up a bit, and because waking up and feeling like, why am I so wealthy, why am I so happy or physically well, as goes into your thing of the abundance archetype.
And I would just love to back up before we get too into the concepts, and just give a bit of history
Yeah.
to, yeah, like, your history on Wall Street, your abundance archetype course, just so we can unpack a bit of your past.
Yeah. Who is this guy talking about this crazy stuff? I think that's where we're going. Yeah, I get it. I get it. We were starting at the end and we're working backwards. Um,
That's how I
you know,
like to do it, so don't worry.
yeah. Well, to give like a very eagle eye view of my life, I grew up in pretty good circumstances, had very good parents, very committed parents, and most of my life was committed towards trying to excel in sports and academics and things like that. Um, and even though I had all this great upbringing, I always felt like something was missing. I don't know if you ever felt that, like there was just something didn't
Mm.
feel right. Like I didn't feel like a deeper connection. There was a longing that I felt. And I went through this kind of, pretty mainstream life for the most part. By all means, it was like, beautiful privilege. And I went to university, and, at university, I started kind of getting into excess and drinking a lot and partying a lot. And that kind of led to a Wall Street job when I was 21, 22 years old after university. And
Did you have was there like you wanted to work in Wall Street before, or was it kind of
yeah.
something that unfolded? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because like one of the most important things that I think people can think about when they think about, what is their purpose? It's quite simply like what did they love to do when they were a kid? And for me, my first dreams were to be a drummer and to be a magician. And I'll kind of circle back to that in a second. But then when I was about 11, 12 years old, I got turned on to this idea of Wall Street.
Yep.
My dad was in Wall Street. He wasn't a financial trader like I was. He was an executive. But I got exposed to the culture when I was very young, and I was like, "Man, this is fun! Like this looks really exciting." Like I
And
would go,
was it Wolf of Wall Street kind of vibes? Were there midgets being thrown onto walls, or was it a
um,
toned back version from the movies?
well, the movie is like a little bit excessive, but this was like I was born in 1980, so this was like late 80s, early 90s, and
Okay.
Wall Street did have like a very kind of free, exciting energy to it.
Mm.
The people that my dad worked with were very, they're not Wolf of Wall Street type of people. That's a little bit of like I mean, that stuff probably exists, but it's a little bit of a, made for TV, but there
For
was
sure.
like a little bit of that energy of like, people dressing casually and making a lot of money and doing cool things and driving cool cars and having great parties. And, I started to get exposed to this culture and I was like, wow, these people are having a lot of fun. It looks like a very exciting place to be. And it's like, this is what I want to do. This looks like amazing, amount of freedom and ability to
Mm.
make wealth and to be creative. And everyone's like almost like they're on a sports team kind of vibes. It's like a team of exciting people and young people. And I'm like, this is really, really cool. So that became my dream. And when I went to college, I always knew that I kind of wanted to get into that. So I wasn't that much interested in other things. And when I graduated around 21, 22, I got my first job working on Wall Street. And I got into a very interesting career. It just kind of found me, which was being an assistant on a new kind of trading that used the weather to predict financial markets. So
Oh well.
the core thesis was understanding the weather and how that impacts various things such as energy, let's say, or agriculture, right? I mean,
Okay.
the weather is a huge component in many, many different things
Yeah, all
from
our
you can
cycles and
imagine airlines to restaurants to, more importantly, energy, natural gas and power, heating oil, crude oil, um, all of the main commodities, corn, sugar, coffee, cocoa, orange juice, soybeans, etc., right? All of the kind of the main commercialized, commoditized crops that, are in our world currently.
Mm.
And so I got into this kind of like highly focused kind of niche path, and I started to do really well. Like I just felt like I was made for it. And by the time I was 26 years old, I was quite recognized as being very successful. I was probably the most successful person I knew, from high school for sure, from college most likely. I was already kind of established quite well in this Wall Street trading field, and I was making lots of money, and I was being recognized as a young partner at this very high profile firm that I was working for.
And how
But
are
at the
you feeling during that?
Yeah, well, at the same time, while it was very exciting to me and it was very rich, physically I wasn't doing well. I was 330 pounds, which is like, I don't know if you guys probably are in kilograms like the rest of the world, but maybe 160 kilograms or something like that. Like very big
Yeah.
person, um, obese for sure, and very sick and simultaneously, very like depressed. I didn't
Mm.
have I had a larger than life personality, but on the inside, I was paradoxically feeling kind of smaller than life, one could say.
So was there
And
like a mask, almost like an external, like you looked happy on the outside, do you think? Or
well, I mean, like I didn't look physically very good, so I don't
mm,
know from one's perspective, but from one perspective, you would say like this guy kind of has it all, right? He's
yeah,
making like millions of dollars and he's going out, 3, 4 nights a week and sitting at the best club and going in limousines and flying on private planes and doing all these things. But like on the inside, there was a deep hole that I
mm,
had as well. And so, this went on for a while, and I started getting into exercise based on really a crisis that I was faced with, of a health crisis, and not feeling like I was probably going to make it to the age I am even now, with that lifestyle. And I lost all of the weight lost half my body weight over a 2-year period, but still felt pretty empty inside. And now this was like a real kind of like questioning moment, because now I had the job and I had the physical body, but still felt the emptiness.
mm,
And then that's what kind of turned me on, that there was an inner wholeness. There was an inner value that I wasn't, paying attention to.
yes.
And that was around 2008 approximately, and that started me on my spiritual quest that I've been on, ever since. So I started learning, and with the same kind of appetite I had for excess and the same kind of appetite I had for Wall Street, I put that into my spiritual quest. I just kind of have like a very strong drive to learn and to seek and to understand things. And I put that into a spiritual quest and started studying with people from around the world in a variety of fields for many, many, many years. And I integrated it quite well into my Wall Street career. I started, bringing my own food into work and putting in standing desks and exercising and having them put in a sauna and a meditation room, and started to bring a lot of these principles into my work. And I did this quite well for about 10 years, and until I got to the point where my mind was not really in it anymore.
Mm,
I started fantasizing about being a healer, being a shaman, being a medicine man, um, doing psychology and spirituality and studying religions. And, you know, I had so much respect for Wall Street, in that if you're going to do that job, you have to be like 100% engaged. This is like at the highest level. It's like you're not going to go show up to Major League Sports and kind of like have a hobby somewhere else that takes up like half your time. Like you have to be fully committed.
yep.
I would say this goes for anything, but this is like operating at the highest level of excellence in this field. And
And
so you have,
at these highest levels, what are your work hours like? Are you working weekends?
yeah,
Like during the peak of this, how close are you to burnout? Are you managing this with exercise and spiritual
yeah.
practices?
Well, the Wall Street trader path is different from the investment banking path.
Okay.
The investment banker typically has those crazy hours. They're the ones that, are working 7 days a week, 12 hours, 15 hours a day, whatever, eating dinner at work. The investment trading hours are very generous in that, it's a pretty early morning start, but, not like that ridiculous. And, probably by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the markets are generally closed. So you do have like the advantage of generous hours of when you need to be there. And being in that role, you have quite a lot of freedom. There's not a lot of people that rely on you in terms of like meetings you need to attend to, or um, number of hours you have to be present to answer to somebody. At the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is how are you producing.
Yeah.
And so if you can produce what is expected of you in 1 hour a day or 23 hours a day, that's really up to you, as long as at the end of the day you hit the numbers that are required of you, in this job. And now this is sort of like a broad statement, but that was kind of
Mm.
more of my experience being in the hedge fund world. I had a lot of freedom, but yeah, I was getting up early and going to work, and probably working until about like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And but at the same time, markets more and more are open 24 hours a day. So while I wasn't physically at the desk, this stuff is always on your mind. And
Mm.
when you go home on Friday and the market's closed for the weekend, you know, it's not like the thinking about it or the stress about it stops, because you know that you're going to walk in Monday morning and you're going to either be up a ton or down a ton based on what transpires over the weekend. So in some ways it's a constant 24/7 job. But at the other hand, I felt like the trading path was advantageous versus the investment banking path, because that path requires you to be physically present, where mine didn't. So
Okay.
over that 10-year period, I found a good amount of time to go to the gym, and I started eating healthier, and I was meditating, and I was incorporating all these things, and I found a pretty good way to stay balanced. I felt like I found a sustainable way to take care of myself, to have a balance in relationships, and also to do my job pretty well. But really, the big shift for me was my passion. My passion started to dissipate around the end of that time, where I wasn't that interested in that. And I found myself spending most of my time, going to morning meditations. Happened to live next to a Buddhist center, and I would, instead of being on the desk at 6 a.m., I was sitting in meditation at 6 a.m. And I started to realize that my eye was more and more coming off the ball, and it wasn't respectful to my team or to my clients or to anything to have kind of a waning of my interest. And so I started kind of fantasizing about these other ways of living and working in the world. And around January of 2019, I started to do that. I left the Wall Street job. I retired from that field, and I haven't been back in 5 years now. And I started going deeper and deeper into my studies and certifications and understanding of different modalities of psychology and spirituality and medicine and things like that. And I really kind of left that Wall Street person behind. I was like, this is not that interesting to me anymore. This guy's like stressed out all the time. All he cares about is watching the screens, and it's too intense, and it's not really like a wholesome, like kind of purpose driven life.
Yeah.
And I kind of left that all behind, and I went into these other fields. But the interesting thing about it is that when I was in these other fields, I started dreaming at night about the markets. The markets kept calling me back. And that ultimately led me through a process of realizing that for me to be impactful in the world, and for me to really be the best version of myself, I had to include both of my skill sets.
Mm.
I had to include the skill set of the trader and the skill set of the healer or the psychologist, therapist. And so that ultimately led me to my understanding of abundance. That abundance is not just having financial wealth, because I had that and that didn't feel abundant to me. It's not just having physical health, because I had that too and that didn't feel abundant to me. And it's not having spiritual health without the other two either.
Yeah.
So it's
Because you
this
two
real.
in the ethereal kind of world, if you just have spiritual wealth
You
without
are
the other.
you are, ultimately, if you look at the concept of Lucifer and Ahriman, the
Mm.
Ahriman is like the overly only Wall Street, only money, only technology world. And the Luciferic side is like, I'm only going to check out. I'm going to be a monk. I'm never going to really be in the world. I'm just going to study on my spiritual practices. And ultimately, what we need is to come into the middle where we marry again the spiritual with the material, where science and religion come together, where money and responsibility come together, and where all of these things meet in the middle, where we are entrepreneurial successful, and we're doing it in a way that makes a big impact on the world, that lights us up, that fills our heart, that is emotionally and mentally rewarding and has a spiritual purpose. And at the same time, we are healthy, living beings and are able to have healthy relationships. And so this took me to the idea of the abundance archetype, which is really the path that I'm on. And what I'm teaching is now kind of what I've integrated or what I'm integrating, depending on where I view myself in this process. It's almost
Yeah.
like a horizontal process, right? It's kind of an infinite game in the way that I'm constantly learning about this. But my course, the Abundance Archetype, is the integration of my life's journey from Wall Street through my health journey to my spiritual quest. And so going back to the beginning of the drumming and the magic, if you think about these things that you love to do when you were kids, like, and I could give some more examples if you're interested,
Yeah.
other than myself, of how I've worked with this with other people. But for me, the drummer and the magic, what's underneath the role of the drummer? What's underneath the identity of the drummer? Maybe you could say rhythm or
Okay.
a pulse or a beat, right?
Mm,
And what's underneath the magician? Well, it's like a sense of curiosity and wonder and awe, right?
mm,
Spontaneity and altered state.
for
And
sure.
so when I realized that what I really loved about the drumming was not the idea of the drummer, but it was the rhythm. And what I loved about the magician was it wasn't the idea of the magician, it was the magic itself. That actually those were the same things that made me a good trader. That I could feel the rhythm and the beat of the market. I was on the pulse. At the same time, that industry gave me that sense of magic. Like I was so in awe and wonder of like creating these ideas and seeing profits and following the markets. I had a childlike nature to myself about it. It was exciting. And then when I moved into the coaching world, I realized that that's what actually made me a good coach, was pacing the rhythm of my clients and helping them establish rhythm and ritual in their own life.
Yeah.
And I got that same sense of joy when I would light them up with something that changed their life. And I could give that to them, that sense of wonder and curiosity and awe for life, and teach them how to use magic in their life and to view that their life is magic. And
Yeah.
so
It's such a
ultimately, yeah, I was just going to wrap this up, is ultimately what I was saying was we have these core qualities that we come into in life that are not so much at the identity level, but at the energetic level, that stay with us through whatever we're doing. And so our roles can change. We can move from the drummer and the magician to the Wall Street trader, to the coach, now to the teacher. But ultimately, the essence of what makes me good at those has been there all along. And the more that
mm,
I'm connected to that pulse, the more success and happiness that I find in my life.
wow, it's super powerful. It seems a lot. It's like this when you connect to this authentic expression of yourself, and I resonate with so much what you've spoken about there because yeah, I've got a friend, David Giddings, and he speaks, you're just speaking about that energetic imprint, and he's been kind of teaching me the idea that, success at the end of the day is this energy that you embody. And like no matter if, if you feel like you've had a successful day, that is ultimately success in these different areas of your life versus it's never going to be met by acquiring, every material object or that Corvette or these external objects, and a lot of it lies within. And what's so interesting to me, it's like I've been on a different journey, but it's similar in many ways because I, from a young boy, was always so interested in filming people, and I always had like a little camera everywhere, and I started making little surf videos, and that led into content, which led into film directing, and I've had the privilege to work with some people like Mr. Beast and another friend of mine, Dan Mace, and I've directed commercials and stuff, and also had this like very exciting, promising career, and like been drawn into this whole industry. That's also got its flashing cars and parties and like quite this kind of elite cool lifestyle. And then like one day it just hits you like, why are you making commercials? Like, I don't feel like the world needs too many more advertisements thrown at them. And like what I fell in love with at first was telling people's stories, and I think a lot of it also relates back to The Magician. And I always loved interviewing people for films, and like, why do you do this? Why have you chosen this
Yeah.
beautiful career path? And a lot of that gets lost in commercial work because you're trying to add purpose and why to a product. Like people are trying to, because finding your purpose and your why is it's like a deeply cosmic thing to me, where it can't like be pinned down to, I don't know, the purpose of Doritos. Maybe it all plays some purpose for people. But yeah, just really interesting to, and I'd love to ask you next, like, to like define success on your own terms and start to learn that it's not exactly what's been sold to you. Like we've been sold this idea of success, and for a lot of people it is the success of Wall Street or Hollywood, or like now it's a kind of social media influencer. There's all these kind of things thrust at us on what success is. And then like I can't think who said, I'm sure I've heard it on one of the Paul Check podcasts, but to spend your whole life climbing a ladder only to realize the ladder's perched on the wrong rooftop or wall. So
Yeah.
yeah, what's your thoughts on defining success, and how was your initial definition of success going into Wall Street, and how has that shifted now?
Yeah. Those are really good questions. Um, you know, I think we all would probably agree that in the West, the definition of success is, measured by mostly professional success, right? How successful are you in your industry? How much money have you made? What's your bank account? What's your status?
Mm.
Um, and I'm not here to negate that. But if we look at the indigenous understanding of success, it comes back to a concept of how many people are you taking care of? How many people are you feeding? How healthy is your family? How strong is your community? What's your impact? Right. So I think ultimately that in this day and age, the answer has to lie with both. To really that success for me is that entrepreneurial side, but also coupled with what's my impact? How strong are my relationships? If I'm really good at my job and I'm making a lot of money, but my kids are fucked up, is that success? If I spend tons of time with my kids, but I can't put food on the table, is that
Mm.
success? Right. So I think it's like a yes and here. I think that there is a part of it that the West has right, but it's not the only thing. And I think there's a part of it that, more of the indigenous cultures have right, but that's not ultimately the answer either. And so, that's kind of like a first stab at it. For me, ultimately, it's having wealth, but at the same time, having well being,
Mm.
having strong, healthy relationships, and having a spiritual purpose and spiritual connection. If you look at the word success from an etymological perspective, and this is a big thing that I learned from a teacher of mine of yoga named Jeffrey Armstrong. And he taught me, one of the greatest things he taught me was to use the etymological dictionary. So this is a little bit different than a regular dictionary. A regular dictionary looks at words from the usage perspective. So, they might define success by how we use it now,
Mm.
right? So I don't know what the definition of success is, but maybe it's some kind of material leaning, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But when you look at an etymological dictionary, it looks at the roots of the words. So, if you look up success, it comes from su, su, and seed, succeed. And so what is su and what is seed? So
Um,
su is a Sanskrit word that means 1,000 times sweeter or like infinitely sweeter. So we have the word super, right? Success, sugar, all these sweet words, supreme.
uh,
The supreme is su su. So now we have this little hint of okay, something's really sweet, sweeter than we can ever imagine. And what is seed? Well, to seed or like reseed is to kind of like to give way, right? It's to go back, to halt. Um, in some ways, it goes to roots of to step aside, and ancestor has ant seed in it, and that's like going following the way back. And some of the roots are to go under, to follow under. So what is this really saying? What am I pointing to? Is that
uh,
the path to success is to go under. It's to go into ourself. It's to give way to the egoic understanding of what we think we need to do, to let these kind of beliefs disappear, and to go under that, and to go deep into our heart, and find fulfillment that is like what does our heart really want to do? What's really bringing us passion? And that in that path of going under and going back to what we really came here to do and to our true purpose, we find that that road is actually 1,000 times sweeter than we ever imagined versus what we thought we had to do in the world. So, in short, success to me is finding that deep fulfillment and that deep contentment of being who you are. And no matter what life brings to you, that you know who you are, you know why you're here, you know what your purpose is, and you don't let anything in life change your attitude or change your belief or your conviction about who you are.
no, I did a little. I spoke about this recently, but I was talking about like the ethereal onion, and sometimes figuring out who you are is like peeling away these layers of who you thought you were, or who your parents told you were, or society, and it's such an unraveling journey, but it takes so much pressure off to not have to get it right. Because I speak to a lot of young people and like my fiance sisters, and it's seems so daunting to work with purpose when you don't know why, and it like puts so much pressure on, where it's so much easier to start figuring out what it not is at times, and uh like sometimes a part of you is called to try a new career or a new vocation, and or be with a partner or study something, and you can dip your toe in the water and kind of is this it? That might not be it, and it slowly starts to like unravel um this part within you. But it's super interesting with these ideas of success and external ones. I mean, my dad, he was like very successful, I guess externally. He was like a director at Sun International, and he had kind of sacrificed so much of his time, and what I believe was kind of it's a bit more of an older way of the model for like success amongst men, was like you need to go and dedicate like your whole life to work to provide for your family at like the expense of your health, at the expense of present time with your family. um and my dad had basically just retired, and shortly after he got cancer and passed away. And it's so tragic, because like only like in the last few years of his life did I feel, and this is just speaking from what my experience was of his experience, but it felt like he actually started to connect with his soul and like a deeper part of himself that was kind of lost in this whole idea of an external success. And at the same time, I'm very grateful, and I can see the sacrifices he made, to kind of provide for his family and stuff. But I think it's kind of a model that a lot of us in the West have been sold, that like this is what you have to do to make it, or to make it above a certain level, at least on a financial level. You have to like sacrifice your 30s or your 40s, or you up till you're 60, and you hopefully get to retire. Um, so
You know, I
yeah, I
think
don't know.
there's always a bit of, I think everything does come with a sacrifice. You
Mm,
know, we're kind of always sacrificing something. And there's always a
for
trade-off.
sure.
Uh, um, you know, we work a lot, we sacrifice time somewhere else. We spend a lot of time working on our relationships, we're sacrificing our income, right? So
Mm,
there's always something that has to give, but I think it's about finding, like, why are we doing, asking the questions like, why are we doing this? What's the right balance for me? Like, there's nothing against working hard, if as long as you're in awareness of what you're giving up and you're doing it for the right reasons. So I
mm,
think in a lot of ways there's always a sacrifice. Right now, I'm sacrificing time in the gym just by being on this call, or sacrificing time with my kids. But it was a choice that I made because I felt like this was an important thing to do. So I think there's always trade offs. I think ultimately we're all faced with what are the sacrifices we want to make.
mm.
Um, and it gets down to the question of needs versus wants. You know, what do we need and versus what do we want? I need love. I need my home. I need food. I need water. I need friends. I need family. Um, I want a Tesla.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. So I'm not saying don't go for the Tesla, um, but recognizing that um, the sacrifices for needs are more balanced. The sacrifices for wants might come with a different cost. And so, really kind of understanding where you're at with that in terms of what are you working for that you actually need, that are actually going to improve the quality of your life, your relationships, your health, et cetera, versus what do
Mm,
you want? What do you want? And then why do you want that? And if you want that, that's great, but being willing and aware of what you're sacrificing in order to get that, because it all comes at a cost.
no, and like, let's say you choose to spend more time with your family or partner, at the sacrifice of your career because time is so precious. But when you neglect that calling of what your purpose is or mission is in life, and this work that you called to do, like, who, I think ultimately that comes to that, like, I, we all love kind of thing. Like, when you don't pay attention to that love, like, to your own calling and dreams, then, like, it actually, in the long term, it suffers with your relationship with your family. I don't have kids yet, but I'd imagine so. Because, as you said, then you can't provide for them in the way that you want. So, I mean,
I
I'd
think I
also
think
love to
it's
get.
true. I think it's true. I think there's a this is why there's no secret formula, right? I mean, all of us
Mm,
are faced with this every single day. When you go to sleep at night and you look at yourself in the mirror and you honestly say, like, how did I do with the bucket of living my dream? And how did I do in the bucket of my work today? And where could I improve? What about my family? What about my partner? What about my spiritual practice? What about my health? And it's a very fluid thing.
mm,
There might be a day when 100% of the day needs to be committed to work, and there might be a day when 100% of the day needs to be committed to relationships. Right. So balance is a dynamic thing, and it's always changing, and you're always learning, and you're always updating it. And how you navigate that is a day to day thing. Uh, Based on how you're feeling and how are the people around you doing and what are your needs and wants in that moment. And so I think all of us are faced with this question of, what does abundance mean to me? What does
mm,
success mean to me? How do I know when I have it? And I think this is an interesting thing to consider, that there's this is a unique, individualized approach for
yes.
everybody. It means different things, and we all have to find that balance in ourselves for what ultimately brings us fulfillment. The interesting thing is when you bring up the word purpose, it brings me to the word pose. Purpose, Pose. Pose is like our posture. It's our asana, or our yoga posture, right? It's
Yes.
how do we stand in life? So, like, your purpose doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're doing the career that you wanted. That may be part of it, but how do you stand in life is being on purpose. How do you stand when things are difficult? How do you stand? What's your posture you take with your family, your loved ones? What's your posture you take with the divine? What's your posture you take at work? How do you stand when things are not going your way? That's
Mm.
being on purpose. It's really being on purpose is no matter what situation you are in life, you know what your values are. You know what you stand for. And you can stand in it all, even when things are difficult or going against you. That to me is purpose. It's not necessarily having the perfect career.
Yeah, this was an idea that was really new to me until I'd done the HLC training. Was, when someone says, "What do you value?" Often, oh, I value friendship or a good time or someone who's trustworthy. It was so different to me to kind of put metrics to what you value. Like, I value energy, so therefore I need to sleep this amount of time. I value the food I eat, so I need to eat these sorts of meals. I value my exercise and rest time, and just, yeah, kind of defining a container for your values was, I thought, really interesting. And I think it plays into one of your keys in your um abundance archetype program, is the, learning to say no. And that power of it adds a lot more power to your yes,
Well,
I would say.
yeah, well, that's certainly true. But like, just like thinking about it practically, like, what are we talking about? We're talking about like really time management here, right? With all this stuff.
Mm,
So like, if we're really honest with ourselves, when we go to work or when we're preparing for this podcast or doing anything, like, are we really being as efficient as we could? Right? How many distractions do we allow in? How many times do we check our
a
phone?
lot.
How many times do we check our email? How many times do we answer the door? How many times do we think about what we're going to watch on Netflix tonight or something like that? Right. So to me, it gets down to being very efficient with time. And, ultimately what you want to do is you want to find these blocks of time when you're hyper focused on exactly what you're doing and nothing else. So
Mm,
I find that when you can cultivate these flow states, and I know you want to talk about flow states, but
yes.
let's just define flow states as like highly immersed states when you're kind of performing and feeling at your best. Those can come in like 90-minute or max 2-hour blocks before you start to get fatigue,
Mm,
and you can you can do like some, even scientific research will show like 2, 3, 4x the amount of work that you can do in that amount of time when you're distracted.
yeah.
So it takes us about 20 to 30 minutes to slip into the flow. So right now, I don't know how far we're into this podcast, but I feel like I'm in the flow with you. I'm not thinking about
Yes.
time. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just here with you. We're having a good conversation and we're really like present with the conversation. But maybe at the beginning of the conversation when we were doing the meditation, I was still a little bit fragmented. I hadn't
Yeah.
really like dropped in yet, right?
Mm,
So now I'm in this flow. Now I'm in this sweet spot. So if I could stay here and say no to everything else for the next hour, I know at the end of that hour, I'm going to have magic. But if I go and, for example, if I go say, hey, hold on a second, I need to check my phone and I see like, somebody needs me or there's some crisis from a client or, the repairman's coming in a few hours to fix the
the
cold
stocks are
plunge or
down.
something, it pulls me out of the flow. And then it takes me 20 to 30 minutes to get back into it. And then
Mm,
I'm in this like loop of in and out of flow and I don't actually sustain anything for, a good amount of time to actually reap the benefits. So part of saying no is just saying no to other things when you're doing one thing, right? It's not so much the question of how long does it take me to do that new task? It's how long is it going to take me to hit that peak level of focus again, and so I think if we can really kind of dedicate ourselves and silo ourselves to specific tasks at specific times, we can wind up doing them with less time and more effective
mm,
so that we can free yourself up to do other things and be more present for those other things. Like, what good is it if we're with our kids and we're thinking about work, right? I mean, what
mm,
good is it if we're with our partner in bed and we're thinking about, the meeting we have tomorrow?
yeah.
Like it's better to be fully immersed in those things when we're there and doing them and dedicate that time to them and be more efficient. Then and so that really comes down to saying no to distractions. It's a very hard thing to do, but simply like putting yourself in a space, if let's just say you're doing work, putting yourself in a space. If there's other people around, letting them know that for the next 2 hours, you're going to be immersed on writing or whatever you're doing, turning off your phone, turning off the distractions, shutting down your email, and writing for 90 minutes. And in that 90 minutes, you can get done so much
Mm.
more than if you had a state where you were just open to all the dings and the pings all the time and the distractions. And so a lot of that I think is comes down to time management, that we can do the things that we're doing more efficiently and more effectively, and it could actually free us up to be able to work less. And part of that comes with those microdose meditations that I was doing earlier,
Yep.
right? I could be stuck on a problem for so long, but if I spend time to just alter my state momentarily, I might get that inspiration. This is
Mm.
called eureka moments, right? So the great Archimedes coined this by trying to prove for the king, I don't know where he was, probably somewhere in Greece or Europe or something, to prove to the king that the crown that was gifted to the king was made out of pure gold. And he couldn't figure out how to mathematically do it. And he tried and he tried and he tried and he failed. And then in a moment of exhaustion, in a moment of giving up, he just draws a hot bath for himself. He gets into the bath. And as he's getting into the bath, he realizes that the weight of his body is equal to the amount of water that's displaced. And he then figures out this way to measure the weight of the crown and to measure if it's pure
Oh,
gold or
wow.
not. And so that's where this idea of the eureka moment comes, this
Yeah.
great moment of insight. And it
Like
didn't
you
come
release on that cognitive grip for a second, and
for a
the
second.
insight comes. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've all had this, right? Like the moment in the shower or the moment on a car drive, like a long car drive, and we
Mm.
all of a sudden have this breakthrough moment, this
Yep.
breakthrough idea, this creative spark that comes in. We're on the treadmill or something, and we let go of the day, and all of a sudden the new insight comes in. And so there has to be this push and pull of work. There has to be this rhythm where we're pushing, but then we let go. We go do something else. We let go of everything. We just go into like a free mode or a relaxed mode. And this kind of tension between the pushing and the pulling gives us those new insights that we can come back and then push more effectively. So all of these things are kind of tools to find ways to work smarter.
Yeah, even there's a book called Stealing Fire by Jamie
Yeah.
Wheel and Stephen Kotler, and that idea of when they were trying to learn how to train the Navy SEALs faster, it's just one of the things they did to train them in a new language was put them in, I think, sensory deprivation tanks, and they took the learning period from learning a language from 6 months to six
Yeah.
weeks, just like take
No
away the
distractions.
distractions. Yeah, but we don't all have sensory deprivation tanks. But that idea of, yeah, like being in a flow state, and I
No,
guess it's a
we don't have
struggle.
sensory I'm sorry, we don't have sensory deprivation tanks, but we all can shut off our Instagram
Yeah,
or shut off our
but
phone,
I
shut
think
off the
for
TV.
when I speak to like my friends and stuff, I think one of the biggest ones is to shut off this forever to-do list. Like I think the more busy you get in life, or the more ambitious you get, or the kind of higher up whatever ladder you start to climb, this forever to-do list for me is the hardest one to quiet down, because it does interfere when I'm at dinner with my partner and I'm now speaking about a work idea, and it's, we're not having dinner to speak about work, and it's such a hard one to shut off.
Well,
um
it's an interesting thing you're bringing up because one of the techniques that I like to do in the morning, and this is something I picked up from a Joe Dispenza YouTube, you
mm,
know, and I kind of combine it with other things that I've practiced and kind of my own insights. But asking yourself the first thing in the morning, asking yourself a question, and to lying in bed and to be open to some kind of new idea come through. So, he kind of uses the question of like, what's the ideal version of myself today?
mm,
Asking a question and then allowing your imagination or your intuition to present you with like images and ideas and to be open to something like different. Like the ideal version of yourself today might not be to do more work. It might be to
mm,
take a long walk in nature or something like that. But the other day, so usually when I do this kind of exercise, I often see myself like going to the gym and um, getting work done and being in meditation and, spending time with my family and calling a friend. And, sometimes like some new creative ideas will come in of things that I didn't expect. But the other day I changed the question and I said to myself, how do I make this the best day of my life? And the answer that came up was so profound and so simple because I was expecting, like, oh, do a double workout, do a double meditation,
Mm.
hug your kids double, right? Like, do more. And the answer that I got was, all you have to do is to experience the maximum amount of gratitude for what you already have.
Yeah.
So, in order for today to be the best day of our life, it's not about how much more can we do. It's about how much do we appreciate what we've already been given.
Mm.
And from that place will lead to more of that, will lead to the best day of our life from whatever place we're in, even if we're down in the dumps, by starting with gratitude. And why does this happen? This gets us back to the beginning of the question, is like, if we're constantly saying, one day when I have this, I'll be happy, we tell our subconscious that every single day it's going to be one day more. It's always in the future.
Mm.
But when we start with what we have now, what we're grateful for now, the abundance that we have, and I realize that people around the world are in all sorts of different situations, and some of them are very low, right? I mean,
Yeah.
most people are very low, and I'm not trying to marginalize that, but even in that situation, if you could just be grateful for something,
Mm.
it will lead to a better day than what you have relatively. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for breath. I'm grateful for my body. I'm grateful for my partner. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the sun. It doesn't have to be like my big bank account. And if you do have a big bank account, be grateful for it so that you can enjoy it and then you could lead to more success. But the point is like, for me, it's actually less of a mindset of to do versus what have I already have? What are the gifts I've been given? What are the privileges I have? What are the skills I have? What is the beauty I already have in my life? And paradoxically, that actually leads to more of that because now you're focusing on it. Let me give you just a quick example, because everything in the spiritual realm, to me, is in a lot of ways a mirror of things that we already know.
Yeah.
So if
That as above, so below kind
pretty
of
much, yeah. And so, like,
principle.
let's just say, we're having, I have you over for dinner, and you come into my house and I make this amazing dinner for you and everything's clean and perfect and beautiful and I spend a lot of time on it. And you just come over and you kind of eat the dinner like real quick and like throw the plate in the sink and leave. And you don't say thank you. You don't show any
Yeah.
kind of appreciation, or you don't help clean up or whatever. Um, I'm not going to probably want to make another dinner for you very soon, right? You know what I mean? And so, like, why is not the universe like that? If we think about the universe, if the universe gives us a gift, they give us the gift of this body. They give
Mm.
us a gift of Mother Earth, the sun, the moon, the stars. They give us water to drink, food to eat, friends to laugh with. If we don't show gratitude, is the universe going to make us another dinner? Going to give
Yeah,
us
for sure.
more? But when we can start with a place wherever we're at to say, hey, we're grateful for what we have, the universe says, wow, you're appreciative. Let me make you another dinner. Let me have you over for Christmas. Let me do something really nice for you. Because why? Because just like us, what is the universe like? It likes to be appreciated. And we like to be appreciated. We like when people say thank you. And the universe likes the same thing. It wants to hear thank you. And when it hears thank you, it gives. Just like when we're appreciated and people say thank you to us, we naturally give back without even thinking
Mm,
about it.
that's true. And yeah, just, I mean, even for me, if I think of bringing that gratitude frequency or, doing a gratitude exercise, it really is the simple things that you can so easily take for granted that those are the things I'm grateful for. I was like, thank you for my partner, thank you for my parents, thank you for the dogs, thank you for breathing, thank you for this food. Like, it's really, the most simple relationships I have um, in life that I'm like the most grateful for. And it's funny that gratitude practice. I was watching a Naked and Afraid, and there were two contestants, and the one was this quite a big lady, and she was very spiritual, and she was kind of saying a whole great spirit, and they were in this like super rough Amazon jungle type scenario, and the other guy was the opposite. Like he was super anti nature, thought everything about nature was to be like kind of used and pillaged. And every day she would go and do these like gratitude meditations by the river and center herself and thank you, grandfather fire. And she like paid attention and said thanks. Um, and it was just so amazing to see. And I think the guy lasted like 4 days or something, and he was out, and she lasted the whole time. And she was the first African American woman to like survive in this jungle scenario. But I just watched that and I was like, good on you, because it just showed the different mindset of like this connection to nature and like thank you. And even for the hard stuff, because I think like that's when I practice it, it's like thank you for the tough lessons. Like there's things that I feel you've really healed when you can look back and like genuinely be grateful for like this shit you've gone through, because like you can look back and like fuck, that sent me on a whole different path that I wouldn't have been on
Yeah,
without that. And
it's true. I think
yeah.
we have to remember that we're living in a highly intelligent universe.
Mm,
Nature is highly intelligent. Our bodies are highly intelligent. And we get so kind of bogged down in the material world that we think like artificial intelligence is intelligent, and video games are intelligent, and computers are intelligent. And, that is true. They are intelligent. But we forget that the greatest intelligence there ever is the universe itself.
yeah.
And that this universe we live in and nature that we live in is not only highly intelligent, but it's alive. And
Mm,
and this is why, people of religions and tribes and things, for as long as we know, have been sort of personifying these energies and elements with, deities and statues of ways to relate, to have a relationship
yes.
to these beings. Um, they're not like, they're not like, they're beyond our imagination in terms of, they're beyond form, these energies. It's not like, this little statue on my desk is like the exact look of the energy. Like Archangel Michael is not like in the sky with a big sword or something like that. That's like a kind of a common like one you see. Or there's not this big elephant headed Ganesh like sitting up there, but it's pointing to a quality and an energy. And
Yeah.
what it does is it enables you to relate to these things through relationship. Everything here is a relationship to ourself, relationship to others, relationship to our community, to our jobs, to the world, to Earth itself. Everything works on relationships. And one of the key relationships you have to find abundance is relating to the universe itself,
Mm,
recognizing that you can be a friend to the universe. You can be a best friend to the divine. You could be a lover. You could be a parent. You could be a child. You could be anything you want.
mm,
That all of the forms of love that we have here are actually available to us on a higher plane in an infinite proportion. And that when we wake up to the fact that these things around us, this universe we live in, is the most magnificent intelligence there is, and be in awe of it and be grateful to it. And instead of like, if you were working for a very powerful CEO at a corporation, you wouldn't walk into their office and say, what can you do for me? Right? You'd say, wow, I'm so in awe of everything you're doing here. You're running this amazing company. You're changing the world. Can I get anything for you? Can I just learn from you? Thank you. I just want to be
yeah.
in your presence, right? But then we don't think about that. And then we're sitting with like the great CEO, the divine, great spirit, or the universe itself. But we don't say, wow, amazing job you're doing here. Look at this thing you created. This is magnificent. Thank you for making such an impact. Can I learn from you? Can I help you in any way? I love your mission. I want to be in reciprocity with you. I want to be on the same frequency as you. And when we come with that kind of attitude, just like the CEO who we walk into their office and sees our genuine approach and our willingness to learn and our innocence, the CEO says, you know what? Why don't you, help me out? You can get my coffee. You can help me print out these papers. But in the meantime, I'll teach you a few things along the way and I'll help you on your path. Right. And it's the same
Mm.
kind of thing with the universe. We have to recognize that the same principles of relationship that we know very simply here, like love and gratitude and forgiveness, have to also exist on that higher plane. And when we kind of tune into that, abundance can more naturally flow to us, just like it does in our life with the people that we love.
And it feels like that relationship to the universe. I think a lot of people struggle with they're kind of trapped in a negative bias to stuff. And, going back to even how you were drawn to the magician archetype almost as a kid, it's such a beautiful thing to get to see that wonder in the universe and God or Great Spirit and build a relationship with that. Because, I mean, that's been the gift I've got from plant medicine and, um, lots of journeys on psychedelics. As it took me from an atheist at 24 to, now I've got a drum and a rattle up there. So it's been a bit of a shift. But um, yeah, I yeah, I've even heard Terence McKenna speak about, because we don't have the language for the divine. And like you were saying, like, we're getting shown these deities and personifications to explain and have a relationship with it. Um, but yeah, it's such a, I've kind of lost my train of thought there, but it's such a practice to actually get to have that relationship, because ultimately it's some kind of relationship with yourself. But I loved how you compared it to a CEO there, because it makes so much sense. It's why would something so magnificent, while it can be unconditional love, but like if you aren't showing love to the universe and you aren't showing gratitude, like where are you, like why would you kind of get stuff returned to you? I don't know quite what I'm trying to say. It's like out the grasp of my being able to like put my
Well,
finger on it. But
you're pointing to a good point because, there's a word in Sanskrit called achintya. Achintya means inconceivable to the mind, essentially.
mm,
So, these things that we're talking about, we can only really talk around them,
yes,
talk about them. But, words don't do them justice. They have to be experienced through direct experience, which is where plant medicines can come in and other forms of that kind of direct experience. You
yes,
can experience it in a moment of being lost in lovemaking when there's no words, for that moment. Um, there's maybe lost in ecstatic dance or art or poetry, um, or seeing a child be born, right? There's these moments of experience that we have, but when we start to go around and talk about it, we can only really talk around it. So
mm,
we do our best to try to understand it, but we're talking about something that is technically inconceivable to the mind to even speak about. It could only be experienced through direct knowing and not really read in a book. Um,
yeah, I agree.
so that's I think just riffing off of what you were saying there.
Yeah, and then it's that ineffable essence of it. But it's amazing what's coming out with like AI art. And I just, if you look at Alex Gray's art, I'm like, have you been there? Because I've been somewhere similar. And then I feel like for people that are skeptics or atheists or something, like, plant medicine, if you allow the experience, and I don't think anyone should be like forced into this, but it is a privilege to get to have that mystical experience that opens you up to like, oh my God, like this is a connection we've had forever, and it can feel so archaic. And I remember my first ayahuasca experience was just after the time when my mom passed away, and it was such a like yeah, like the place I went to was so out of this world and cosmic and real, and it was like out of Salvador Dali's imagination mixed with ayahuasca vines and stuff. But the feeling I had that was, you know, just so inexplicable is I've been here before, and the only way I've been here before is surely if I've died before is like just this. That was like a knowing I felt like I instantly had in my body. I couldn't quite describe it. That was like the simplest in words was like I've been here. The only way I've been here is if I've died here. I'm a soul, and it was just so like abundantly clear, like in an instant. Um, but yeah, I see you've got some San Pedro cactuses in the back there. I I s-
I do.
um I wanted to also, I saw in one of your things like altered states of consciousness. What has been some of your um I guess journeys or insights like via plant medicine?
Yeah. You know, altered states, like I said, can come in many
Mm.
different ways. I mean, they can, first off, they can come without plant medicines.
Yep.
One of the most amazing ways that I experience altered states is through drumming. So I came into this world with a drum in my hand, more or less, and that's always been an altered state for me. Painting is an altered state.
Yeah.
Writing poetry, dancing, being in nature, right? So I want to start off with the fact that there are many, many ways that people can experience altered states. Even the meditation that we did earlier was an
Mm.
altered state. Meditation itself is an altered state. So, altered states themselves don't necessarily need to come with plant medicines. Plant medicine has to be a calling,
Yeah.
right? So this has to be something that is deeply pulling at you to want to do. Um, why are you doing this? Why are you called to this? What's the intention of this? Is this something that is so pulling at your heartstring that you can't not do it? Right. So, like, there has to be a deep intuitive knowing that is like confirmed, in many different ways. It shows up in a feeling. Then a friend mentions something that catches your attention. Then you see a YouTube that confirms it. And then open up a page to a book randomly that confirms it. And then you see enough of these things in a row where like, not only do you have this intuition and this calling, but it's being confirmed back by the universe with feedback
Yeah.
many, many, many times, to where you have no doubt that it's the right thing for you. There's a whole podcast we could do about, the do's and don'ts. And,
Mm.
you know, the most important thing in my mind is to be with a highly experienced guide. These are sacred medicines. Um, these are not recreational drugs, in my opinion. you
Mm.
know the setting in which you do it needs to be sacred, needs to be protected, needs to be clean. You need to have a very highly knowledgeable guide, somebody who's dedicated their life to this, who has the utmost integrity that you would feel comfortable leaving your kids with, you know and many other things that I could continue on. But for me,
Mm.
this is something that I take very, very seriously, and I take to a level of mastery, and to a precision of excellence in my devotion to understanding how to work with these medicines with the highest level of integrity, authenticity, and you know professionalism, and depth possible. Um, you know, in short, what I would say is, in my view, what I've learned is that plant medicine is the ultimate intelligence. It is the technology that we're seeking for. We're
Mm.
looking in this external world for AI and for all of these things to make our life better, but none of them will actually connect us to a deeper sense of who we are, why we're here, or what our purpose is, or how we fit into the divine puzzle. But ultimately, the in my view, the real intelligence, the real technology that can do that, that's here to awaken us at this particular time in history when we don't have 90 years to sit under a tree and
Mm.
meditate. When the world is moving at such a fast pace that we need to have a technology to support us. And the natural technology that I believe can do that is plant medicine when done with a lot of different caveats of responsibility and sacredness.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I think, like I'm busy studying at the Psychedelic Coaching Institute, and the guy who runs it's Paul F. Austin, and he actually just did a podcast with Paul Check, I think like a couple of weeks before I had joined. But it's an interesting one because I think so many people in very rapidly growing numbers are being called to plant medicine, and there's maybe not enough skilled practitioners out there for the amount of people interested. And then at the same time, I don't feel people have quite reckoned with the weight of the substances they are taking and have not prepared properly. And you know I also have seen multiple times where people are thrust into a heroic dose of mushrooms or um whatever it might be, like a really high dose of psychedelics as their first time, without you know being prepped or kind of, what's the word, screened, like, for, have you ever sat with yourself in meditation for an hour? How do you these are a lot of people that seek these substances, struggle to sit with themselves in a room for an hour. They're scared of sitting with themselves, and they're distracted with phones or TV or substances. And a lot of these people are the ones being drawn. And it's interesting you say that, because my experience being like kind of working with psychedelics was first done recreationally, and I like, it was a good journey, but it was so different than the first time it was done in ritual and ceremony. And like, I kind of realized then, like, what I think you're also speaking to, this is a deeply ancient sacred tool that can really be used to, I guess, shed a lot of layers and heal stuff and connect you to,
Yeah.
like, like this guy and intelligence and soul.
Well,
And it's,
well,
it's an
people,
interesting.
what people don't realize is that the the medicine itself might be, and we'll just use these as rough estimates. This is not
Mm,
like an exact percentage, but let's just say it's 1/3 of the outcome of the experience.
mm,
Okay. So, I read something once that, some ancient proverb, I think Irish proverb, says that 1/3 of who we are is influenced by our family, 1/3 is like our community, or like, our religion and social aspects. And then the other third is like our own unique kind of individual process that's happening. Right. So, um, in that way, let's say that the medicine is only really 1/3 of the outcome.
mm,
A big component of the ceremony is, what's your intention? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to get out of it? And how is it going to make your life better by having that information? The energy of the guide that you're with, that people don't understand, that the guide is bringing in everything that they have. Are
mm,
they clear? Are they open? Are they working through stuff? What's their authenticity? What's their, and then how much energy can they draw on to bring into the ceremony? What is the energy of the music being played? What's the intention of the music? Is it just a cute little soundtrack in the background? Like, here's a 5-hour mushroom track, just hit play? Or is somebody cultivating a symphony of music, based on the energy in the moment, where it's, maybe a song being played, or an instrument being played, or a prayer being read, or poetry
mm.
being, or moments of talking. There's a whole kind of direction of the energy through the music. What's happening
And the
shamanic?
magic unfolding through
Yeah,
through all
what's
of that.
happening shamanically in the space? What day of the week is it? If you've ever done a ceremony on Friday or Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday, each one of these days holds completely different energy. You know, I mean, Friday is a day of Islam, Saturday is a day of Judaism, Sunday is a day of Christianity. They all have particular energies. Each one of the planets corresponds to a different day. Sunday is the day of the sun. Monday is the day of lunar, moon day, right? And so forth. We go through the whole week of the influence of the planets on the days of the week. What's the time of the year? Are you on a equinox, a solstice? Is this a particular holiday? For example, we're reading leading up towards Christmas. Christmas is like a day of resurrection. It's a day of ceremony. And if you
Yeah.
listen to some of those kind of old tales about the shamans and the reindeers and the mushrooms and the bearded man and the reindeer flying, all this stuff, it leads a lot to that these were ceremonial days of psychedelic medicine. So
Mm.
all of those things can contribute. And so like the dose is actually sometimes only a small part of it too. You could say, today I'm going to do this particular dose. And then the next day you come back, or not the next day, but like 6 months later, or a year, you come back, and let's just say you do 2/3 of the dose or half the dose, but somehow it's like significantly more difficult or
Yeah.
significantly stronger. Because like I said, that's only a small piece of the puzzle. There's so many other things that are coming into play. And so when you're doing something recreationally or you're doing something with not an experienced person, the energy can be completely different. And in a lot of ways, it could be almost even dangerous because you're opening up yourself so much psychically, especially ceremonies done in groups can be very
Mm.
tricky. Ceremonies done in spaces that aren't sacred, that are in, public places where there's not a person of authority that you can look to when things get difficult and look for guidance, when there's not a level of trust established between the practitioner and the person that is experiencing the medicine. So this is like as sophisticated as whatever field you want to go into. This is like surgery when done at
Mm.
the highest level, like a very precise spiritual, psychic surgery that's being done. And, you would want to prepare for it as the person going into it, like you would prepare for surgery. You'd probably eat certain foods or, fast or something for a particular number of days and need a particular number of days to integrate it and rehab yourself back into life. And, the surgeon would be very specific about what they were doing. I mean, this is like a very high level of understanding that one can bring, and then there's every level of proficiency down to somebody doing it in the basement of their parents' house, um, while listening to Pink Floyd soundtrack or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not down on that. Everything has its place, but
Yeah.
there's a large continuum of of excellence from the least experienced to the highest master in this field as well. So, plant medicine is a very, very generalized, large term for the realm of possibilities for better or for worse that can exist in this umbrella term.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely seems like there's layers of, I don't know if it's like an order or something, but like my experience with ayahuasca was like there was just something more real and vivid about what I had experienced. Like it felt more cosmic and spiritual, and um like that it felt for me like that there needed to be this, you know, wisdom and shaman that had undergone gone serious training. And but I don't know, I've had like I feel like mushrooms you can kind of walk alone, but it depends on the dosage. Like you can definitely introduce yourself to plant medicines. I don't know if like maybe that's bad advice. It's kind of like what Terence McKenna used to push, but probably not the best advice. Don't listen to that. But yeah, like I think that's where for me, like the idea of a huge heroic dose can be so daunting to people, and that is like really why I wouldn't push the psychedelic experience, especially the full mystical blown one, on everyone unless like deeply called. And like you said, that it's not this whim of, oh, I want to do ayahuasca today. It's like you've been called to do this and kind of wrestled with the idea for maybe a year or two, and then you go do the ceremony and prepare for it properly. But it's where I think the idea of microdosing can be so beautiful, because a lot of the things we've spoken about, like finding your purpose, working in finding flow states, managing your stress and being more present in your task, whether that's at work or with a partner. I feel microdosing is such an amazing modern tool of maybe this third wave of psychedelics, that it can be a bit more integrated into a more like pop modern culture, where as opposed to like the serious doses. But I think if anyone who's tried microdosing, there's always a day where you just slightly overdid it, and now you're on a dose of mushrooms or LSD on your way to work. um,
Yeah.
so I don't know your thoughts on microdosing, or
Well, there's a
I
lot
don't
you
know if I
said.
veered off.
There's a lot you said. There's a difference between a heroic dose and a shamanic dose. And so let's just differentiate that.
Mm,
Heroic dose is, in my opinion, still in the realm of possibility that one could do on their own. But when you're moving into a shamanic dose, that's when you need a very skilled practitioner to be with, and
yeah,
you want to make sure that those things that I'm talking about are in place. Um,
yeah,
you,
no,
you know, in my experience, and this is kind of a long conversation, but mushrooms and LSD and these kinds of things, in and of themselves, are not actually a full shamanic experience. Um, Ayahuasca, for example, how it mixes the grounding element of the Syrian rue with the psychoactive element, gives it the upper visionary experience with the ground. So as we were talking about before, like the kind of the difference between the strictly luciferic energy, where you just go up and
yes,
out, with the aramonic, like I'm grounded in the material world energy, and bringing those two together. The same concept needs to be understood for plant medicine. LSD takes you up and out, and it gives you like this huge kind of visionary experience, but it doesn't have that grounded rooting shamanic element where you go deep down into the earth and really look at
mm,
the thing. So there's various combinations of these things that I play with. And I wouldn't say play, but that I use
yeah,
sacredly, that combine some of the more rooted elements that take you down into the shamanic realm, like an ayahuasca would, but at the same time opening up the visionary experience with the mushrooms. So that's just sort of like a side note. As it comes to microdose, I think these kinds of things need to be really taken on a case by case basis, right? Like,
mm,
take somebody who is on psychiatric drugs.
yeah,
I would love to see a psychiatrist prescribe this person um, microdose of something, let's just say of mushrooms in this particular
yeah,
case, as a bridge to getting them off of something that is inherently more damaging to their liver or to other areas of their body, their bone density, their thyroid, etc., and a much more kind of dense or negative, we could say, energetic profile.
yeah,
So
for
in a
sure.
lot of ways, for that person, the microdose is a positive bridge. And microdose by definition is sublingual. So it's not at the level where you're really going to feel the effects. It's kind of working behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's
And, and,
perceptual.
and it can have um it could have a healing effect, and it could be a good momentum. In my experience, I've personally found that it doesn't ultimately at that level take you to the ultimate breakthrough of
Yeah,
why are you dealing with these things in the first place. So somebody has depression and they're on some kind of antidepressant. you know, if done guided by a professional, I think it's a great momentum and a great step to then move towards the microdosing component as a way to get a healthier, more healing, positive energy. But in my
mm,
experience, I don't think that microdose ultimately deals with why do I have depression in the first place?
no, for sure. And I feel, but as you said, it can be this bridge, because, there's that Carl Jung quote, beware of unknown wisdom. And, psychedelics can be largely wasted if you are a bit young. So I'm just thinking of like some people I know, and, they've been on antidepressants their whole teenage years to young 20s. And you just think like, wow, like I know microdosing will help, because
Yeah.
I think most people have dabbled in SSRIs at some point in their life, and it's it's such a like disconnect from your heart. Like it's such a numbing, dulled down way to live, and for so many people that is like everyday normal. And
Yeah,
so if
it's
Mike,
fully
because at that
right.
age I don't know if you're ready to face a shamanic heroic dose, and this call, like I'm not saying I've definitely met young people that are, um if they're called to that, but it can be a bridge. And I mean, even if that bridge is a couple years where they're walking a microdose protocol to wean off, like it's just so amazing to see how like there can be light at the tunnel, because so many of people are just prescribed these medications without any like glimmer that one day you'll be off this substance. It's
Uh,
terribly sad that that's how so many young people live.
yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that it can be, which is the really important word. It's like, every case
Mm,
is is independent,
yeah,
and I think it could be an incredible bridge. And you have to look at, like, so, like, these people that are going um to work every day and they're taking microdoses. Well, like, what would they be doing otherwise? I don't know. They've been having like 7 coffees, 3 Red Bulls, and this and that. Okay,
yeah.
well, compared to that, it's a positive move in the right direction. But, like, is it ultimately getting to the root of why they have to do that in the first place? Like, is it
Mm,
gonna solve the fact that they're, you know, having is it gonna solve their trauma that's putting them in there? Is it gonna solve the fact that they're in a job they don't like? Is it gonna solve their hurts and their pains? I don't know. Probably not. But it's definitely can be a very, very, very helpful and positive momentum in the right direction. I just don't know if microdose is the end all be all. But I
no,
think
no, no.
compared to where a lot of people are, it's a 100% positive move towards a healthier, holistic, heart-centered life, a natural
Mm,
life. And so for that, I give it, 2 thumbs up, and I deeply honor microdosing for its value and benefit. I just want to kind of look at it from all angles of how to use it effectively, and
yeah.
what its limitations are and what its positive aspects are as well.
Yeah, I think with all these things psychedelic related, like it's not this magic pill. And as you said, even even just going on a huge journey, it's not going to fix, or, even you might have trauma and stuff come up that you finally work through, but you have to go walk the walk and live your life and integrate it after. Um, and I know, like, there's an idea of like where people find like the reasons why they work, and when you're in a survival mode, it's literally to survive and get by. And like a lot of people, I think, on antidepressants and SSRIs are kind of stuck in a survival mode, and then you start to move to that past survival mode, and you want freedom in your life, and whether that's freedom financially or freedom of time. And once you kind of reach through some level of freedom, then you start to move towards meaning in life. And I do think microdosing, and it's again, it's not like I don't want to use a cookie cutter approach for everyone, but it might allow someone a bit of time to pull away out of that survival mode. And you finally get to listen to that inner calling to go investigate into yourself a little deeper. Where I think the kind of mechanism you're building with SSRIs is I feel something, like I need to stop this. I don't want to look where it's coming from. And you just push this feeling down, push this feeling down.
Mhm.
Where I think microdosing, the feeling starts to become a bit more manageable. And maybe this is spoken because I've done high doses and now microdose as a way to integrate that experience. And that's where it seems like the biggest benefits are, as I know it like opens up your critical learning period, like a high dose of psychedelics. And so let's say like psilocybin or a substance like that, your critical learning period might be open to like 3 or 4 weeks after a really big dose. And now if you microdose, you can extend that to like 45, 60 days. And so if you've said like you're working with someone who's highly trained for this experience, and it gets held with integrity, and hopefully you're not going to shed every problem you've had in your life, but hopefully you get to work through something. And like if you guided in this integration container, like it can be like a real catalyst for change when done, I think, professionally and under the right guidance. And I think that's like starting to emerge in our culture, which is it's a really exciting like thing. I think, it's like a different view on how we can work with um like kind of get a fast track. Maybe that's part of the problem, when things done quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. Good reflections there.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie up everything, yeah, just to pull back into, yeah, I guess if you were a listener and you want to learn about, how to bring purpose into your life, how to find your why, how to start to live life with more flow, how to recognize abundance, like, is there any kind of leaving message you'd like to leave our listeners?
Well, I mean, first off, I created a free document, which I know you've seen, called my 8 keys to greater wealth and well-being. So if you go to my website, jasonpickard.org, you can download this free guide. It's, I don't remember how many pages, but about 25-page PDF with 8 different steps that track my 8 keys to mastery in my course, The Abundance Archetype. And so there I'm giving you eight things right off the bat that you can do in your daily life to experience some of the things that you're already talking about. So, I mean, that's probably the best way to do it, is download my free document. From there, if you want to learn more about what I have to offer, what it's like to be in my community, which, for me is like actually the thing that has surprisingly brought me the most abundance from teaching, is the community of people that I've kind of led or am leading. I thought I created this amazing course and that this community was going to be sort of a secondary component, but I realized actually that the community is the asset. The people are the
Yep.
asset. The friendships are the asset. The relationships are the asset, and that the course itself is supplemental. So, I created this course that went through everything that I've kind of digested from my Wall Street experience and everything from the 20 years of spiritual experience, and put them into a program of really cultivating mastery, self mastery, which is really, in my view, the essence of what's required to be professionally successful and spiritually successful, is mastering yourself. But then we meet in group 2 times a week on Zoom, and I have people from all around the world. We get on a call every 2 times a week, and we discuss these things. We're in community together. We go deep into exercises and experiential things, and I bring in special guests from all around the world, at least one a week, to do kind of drop in topics, and people can interview them and kind of be part of almost like a live podcast. So, if you're interested in any of these things, I think the best way is just go on my website and you can book a free discovery call with me, and we can get on a call together on Zoom, and you could just see if what I have to offer is a good fit for you, and we can go deeper into your story and kind of figure it out. Like I said, my free guide, The 8 Keys to Greater Wealth and Wellbeing, is like a simple, easy thing you could download today. And these are things I designed that won't cost you any more time or money or energy to use them. To give it like a snapshot right now, I think the question that you said was like, really ultimately, how can I find more abundance today?
Mm.
Right. You know, I think ultimately realizing that abundance is an inside game, that abundance is literally unto us. It's really overflowing with fluidity and fluency in who we really are. It doesn't matter what our situation is, but ultimately knowing what we stand for, why we're here, what's important to us, what our values are, that is really the foundation of abundance. So, really kind of changing the search from abundance being something outside of yourself to you, the subject of the search, also becoming the object, looking deeply at yourself, being grateful for what you have, really looking at your belief systems. What are your dreams? What is your heart asking you to do? How do you live best? What kind of relationship do you want to be in? What kind of work do you want to do? What values do you have around food and sleep and movement and play? And following that one track at a time. You don't ultimately need to know where the animal is going to be at the end of the hunt, but you want to follow that first track today towards the direction of where you're going. And that track is usually what lights me up today. What is my heart wanting to do today? What brings me joy? Where's the energy at? And following that as a sense of intelligence. And remembering that, there is only ever one of you. There is only ever one of you in the history of the universe. The universe is a complete novelty generator. It only ever produced one of you. And so, to the extent that you're trying to be like somebody else, you're just being a copy. But to the extent that you could really be who you truly are, that what you could stand up for what you believe in, you can express yourself the way you want. You could wear your hair the way you want to wear your hair. You can dress the way you want to dress. You can move the way you want to move. That there's nobody else that can do that like you. You become irreplaceable to the world, and that is valued, and that will become more valuable and valuable to your clients, to your employer, to the universe ultimately. So, we're all here to express ourselves to the fullest. And when we are truly who we are, then we are experiencing abundance.
Thank you for coming and expressing who you are on this podcast. That was, there's so much to unpack there, but maybe another time in the future. Thank you so much,
Love it.
Jason. I really grateful that you came and
Thanks,
spoke to.
brother. I honor
Thank you.
your effort and your podcast here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.